everyone, welcome to Mezzo Medic. My name is Kitty, I'm an academic junior doctor working in the UK, and this is a new mini-series I'm doing called CV Building for Medical Students. I remember when I first discovered such a thing as medical CV when I was in my third year of medical school, and right up until this point I've been kind of trundling along my course thinking that because I've gotten into medical school I was automatically going to become a doctor and automatically going to get into my specialty of choice, which is surgery. And then I met another student who was also pursuing a competitive specialty, and they had already had publications, presentations, extra degrees, anything, you name it, they've got it under their belt, whereas I had nothing.
It's blank. What?
That night I stayed up late looking up the core surgical criteria and how to get into the training, and pretty much ended up in a full-blown panic attack at around 3 AM in the morning. As it turns out, a medical degree doesn't count for much on your CV when everybody has one. This realization was terrifying. I started being proactive soon after that, and my CV started to grow slowly but surely. And 2 years later, I applied to the Academic Foundation program with 3 publications, 10 prizes, 5 national and international presentations, and a few national managerial roles to show for it. And looking back, the process was really much less daunting and achievable than most medical students seem to think. So here's my guide to CV building for medical students to save you the panic that I had 3 years ago. In this video, I'm going to cover briefly what is included in a medical CV, and then I'll give you my personal top 5 tips on how to maximize your time at medical school to make the most out of CV and portfolio building opportunities. I will then be making a series of videos covering the specific areas of a CV, including how to get involved in research, audits, teaching, and leadership positions whilst you're a medical student. All of these, when I've made them, will be available on my channel. Just a quick disclaimer before we begin. Of course, there's no one way to approach the medical CV. This is just my personal experience of what's worked for me, and it may or may not be the same for you. But hopefully this video shows you how you can maximize your time at medical school and shows you the kind of opportunities that are available to you as a medical student. So firstly, let's discuss what high-yield components actually make up a medical CV. And whilst there will be invariably some differences depending on where and what you are applying to, a medical CV will almost always have the following headings. Education. This is essentially referring to your primary medical degree and any additional degrees that you've gotten, such as an intercalated bachelor's, master's, a master in research, or an MRes. And it also includes any other higher educational degrees that you've obtained prior to medicine. So there can be people with a chemistry PhD who then go to medical school, and that would count. Awards and prizes. This can include merits or distinctions that you get for scoring well in a university exam. They can include bursaries for travelling to a conference to present, or grants for doing a research project or a research proposal. And if you're really ambitious, you can potentially get national prizes through national essay competitions or winning a presentation prize at a conference. Research and publications. This is probably the most asked about section, and I'll be doing a separate video to cover exactly how you can get involved in research as a medical student and how to get research output. Generally, this section is split into a couple of things. So you have your top tier, which is your original research articles like your cohort studies, your systematic reviews, your randomized trials, which is published in a peer-reviewed journal of a PubMed ID. And then below that, you then have all your other publications like your letters to editors, your opinion articles, your conference abstracts, and your book chapters or any other educational material that you published which are not necessarily original research. And if you like, you can also mention any ongoing research projects that you're doing as part of this section, although they usually don't count for any points. And aside from publishing your work, you should also aim to present your work at scientific conferences, which are usually weighed according to how wide-reaching they are. So you will score top points for international conferences, followed by national and regional and local and so on. And it's also categorized into oral presentations and poster presentations. Poster presentations usually score a little less than oral presentations because they are generally easier to get in and it's less intimidating to do. Audits and quality improvement projects. So audits are slightly different to research in that for research projects you're trying to test a hypothesis where there is no or insufficient evidence. Whereas in an audit, there is already evidence for a certain standard of practice, and you are just checking if your GP practice or your hospital or your clinic or whatever is conforming to that practice in a good enough way. You then implement a change if this standard isn't met to try and improve it and bring it up to the kind of national gold standard that you should be performing at. This is what's called an audit cycle, and it's an important quality improvement process as it allows hospitals and trusts and GPs to identify any gaps in their care and improve upon it. Leadership and teamwork. You should be able to demonstrate your leadership and managerial skills on both medical and non-medical posts, although the former will probably favour you a bit more in terms of the scoring. Again, they're weighed by the level of reach, so if you're on a committee of a national or international society, you'll be scoring slightly better than someone who's only participated in a medical society from the university. But of course, what it comes down to is how you can demonstrate that you had leadership skills and what managerial skills you gained from that post. Teaching. Teaching is probably the hardest on this list to achieve just because as a medical student and being such a junior person in the hierarchy, you don't have a lot of credentials to run a extensive teaching program. But the tried and tested methods are, if you're a senior medical student, you can teach your juniors and tutor them on medical topics, or you can provide something like an outreach program for people looking into getting into medicine, or you can provide, for example, CPR teaching for the lay public. Commitment to specialty. This is by far the easiest thing to do as a medical student, and it shouldn't be overlooked. Interviewers are not expecting you as a medical student who is just at the beginning of your career to have trails of publications and presentations and degrees coming after you, but they want you to demonstrate interest in the specialty that you want to go into. So just by doing passive things like going to courses, going to conferences, going to clinics, or going to theatres if you're interested in surgery, and keeping a surgical e-logbook will be a really good way to demonstrate interest. And if you've done any of the other stuff like research and audits and all of this stuff relating to the specialty that you're interested in, well, that's just more commitment. And finally, non-academic achievements. Now, this is a section that never really strictly scores any points on your CV, but I always think it's important to include because if you think about it, at the end of everyone's training, everyone will have some publications, everyone will have presentations, everyone will have audits, everyone will have done some teaching. But how do you separate yourself from this sea of people who have the same types of achievements that you do? And so I think that the non-academic achievement section is actually a really good opportunity for you to humanize yourself a bit and to show your individual characteristics, whether that's having done grade 8 in trumpet and piano, or being captain of a football club, or having done a charity and run a marathon, anything like that. It's something to separate you apart from the crowd and show the interviewers that you're, at the end of the day, a person, not just a research producing machine. So that's basically what makes up the medical CV. And it might sound like a lot to get on with, but what you have to remember is that actually a lot of trainees, when they get to their specialty selection stage, most of them are not scoring on anything, and the majority don't even have a first author publication. So really anything that you can get started on at this very early stage of your career is an absolute bonus to your time later when you're applying for jobs. Something to keep in mind, however, is that whilst all of these domains will count for your specialty applications eventually, for the foundation program itself, the only things that gives you extra points, aside from your educational decile ranking, is any publications or extra degrees. If you're thinking of doing the AFP, then additional degrees, prizes, publications, and presentations will all count towards your application. So if you're short for time, I would say aim for these categories first. So now that we've covered what constitutes a medical CV, here are my personal top 5 tips on how to approach building a portfolio as a medical student. It is tempting to become complacent once you get into medical school, and you should really allow yourself some breathing space. After all, you've just got into one of the hardest courses at university. But don't make the mistake of just aiming to complete the coursework and passing exams for the whole 5 to 6 years. If you develop an interest in something, pursue it. There are plenty of opportunities in medicine and for medical students to get involved, but none of these tend to present themselves if you're not looking for them. Begin with passive opportunities like attending courses and conferences, which require pretty minimal effort, but will show that you've demonstrated interest. Then look around for potential willing supervisors and get your foot into a project. Align your SSCs and your electives with your specialty of choice, join a society in medical school and nationally, and you'll soon find yourself in an excellent position to proceed forward, having identified people who can mentor you and open doors for you. Goal planning is essential when you have limited time to pursue extracurricular activities along the already busy curriculum of medical school. It is important to start considering what interests you and what doesn't, and resources like the NHS Health Careers and the Royal College's websites are a good place to start, or simply by talking to a specialist trainee or attending a course or conference. While you don't need to nail down the specialty and put all your eggs in one basket, having motivation is really important because they will see you through the tedious parts of doing a research project and the copious amounts of effort that you need to put into a teaching program, which can be hard to do if you're not interested in a subject. Once you have a vague idea of what interests you, it's a good idea to start looking at the person's specifications on how to get into training in that particular specialty. For example, using the core surgery training portfolio checklist. You can use this as a guide to setting your goals and prioritizing what work needs to be done, since there is no point really, if you're pressed for time, to do more than one really good audit when one will score you all the points and you can put your time elsewhere, like in teaching, research, or leadership positions. You do not want to be that F2 doctor who's looking for the medical school degree certificate a week before their core training interviews. Keep track of your achievements and your CV, and I would say update it every 2 to 3 months, and keep all your evidence neatly in the folder. The benefits of this are: it complements your goal setting, as we said before. It's useful for various applications that crop up, such as positions on a national society which asks to see your CV. It keeps all your evidence in one place. You'll find that in your career, evidence now becomes the most important thing that you need, and without evidence, something might as well have not happened. And lastly, you can impress your supervisor. Some supervisors like to see your CV when they work with you, and if you want to develop a good mentor-mentee relationship, having a CV ready to hand will put you in a good standing. Medical students cringe and roll their eyes at this term because it's so overused, and what's the point? But actually, I can honestly say that networking and identifying mentors for myself has been the singularly most important factor in me getting the achievements that I did at the end of medical school. Most importantly, networking has allowed me to identify a number of mentors at different stages of training who have all given me invaluable advice during my time as a medical student. This is probably singularly the most important and best thing you can do for yourself, because these mentors are people who can open doors for you, give you advice on where and how to publish your paper, where to present, and generally give you life advice and how to get into your career of choice. I feel like medical students, including myself, are often given this idea that you should be scared of consultants and scared of senior trainees, but actually don't be afraid to reach out, because ultimately you have nothing to lose. If they say no or they don't reply to your email, then it's taken 2 minutes out of your day. Whereas if they do reply and you form a working relationship, it will be one of the best decisions that you've ever made. Last but not least, remember to maintain a good work-life balance. Medicine, unfortunately, has one of the highest burnout rates as a university course and as a career. You're constantly expected to perform at your peak, and you're expected to do all of this extra stuff on the side and constantly be striving for more, and that can be very stressful, and if you're not careful and you don't take care of yourself adequately, you can burn out very quickly, and that's not very good for anyone. One of the most important skills that I think as a medical student you need to learn is how to say no. I think you'll find that once you sort of get going, start to know a couple people, start to do a couple projects, you might find yourself in a situation where multiple opportunities present themselves at the same time with similar deadlines. And you might think, oh, I have to say yes because I'm a medical student, I need this on my CV, I need this or that, or certain points or whatever, but actually you don't. You can take a step back and say no. The risk of taking on too many projects at once can actually be detrimental, because then you risk not doing a very good job on all of them, missing deadlines and making other people wait and causing a delay. And most importantly, your medical school grades might suffer. And actually, at the end of the day, you need to be a good medical student and learn to be a doctor first, and then do all of this extra stuff second. So those are my top 5 tips on how to build your CV as a medical student. Hopefully you've taken something away from this and it was useful for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll try and address them in any future videos. As I said at the beginning, I will be doing more specific videos that kind of takes a more deep dive into each of the subheadings of the medical CV. So keep an eye out for those and like and subscribe so that you get notified when they come out. That's it for now and see you next time.